Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about all these newspapers getting called out by the left for not giving a public endorsement of Kamala Harris, because apparently it's expected of them to give an endorsement of the Democratic candidate, and now people are rage quitting newspapers. Mark Hamill's canceling his subscription.
Who cares? I think the value's lost.
And as both the Washington Post, which is owned by Jeff Bezos, the Amazon guy, and we have the LA Times before them, which is owned by some newer investor. This is, I don't know if I'm going to get this right, Patrick Soon-Shiong. But yeah, neither one of them were going to endorse Harris this year. And it's making people mad.
I'm sorry, I can't get past the hair. He's got the Trump cut.
Maybe that's why he's. Maybe that's why he's not.
The hair.
Like, look, we're going to talk about these journalists rage quitting and why we think they're not publicly endorsing Harris. Because in years past, it was fashionable for left-leaning newspapers to have their editorial board publicly endorse a candidate, right? Mm-hmm. So before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. Guys, you get woohoo. If you do.
Woohoo.
Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill. Okay, can we talk about Mark Hamill for a second? He got himself over there with Biden, and right then he should have known, hey, dude's not with it. But he didn't care. He still pushed it. And now he's out there like harassing anyone who doesn't agree. And it's just, dude needs to stop.
I think what's getting me about this is, like, you know, again, you've got fans of major franchises like, you know, Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever, that are, you know, across the board. They've got different politics, and you've got people like Mark Hamill, George Takei, Will Wheaton, whatever, out there. You know, again, like you said, demonizing conservatives.
They'll still eat you guys. They'll eat you last.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's like the thing that gets me is that is their personality now. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not even like. Because George Takei, like, you meet them in person, and a lot of times they're pretty okay guys, right? Like George Takei, he was at the one Comic-Con we were at, and everything I heard was he was a gentleman, he was very nice, he was very whatever.
Yeah, but that was also before all this stuff.
That was before the dark times.
That was also before, like, all this crap that, you know, since before 2016.
And now you look at, if I were to look at George Takei now, right, I would be like, his entire personality is just bashing on conservatives.
I think that, you know, I see this a lot on both sides with extremism and stuff. And it's like, it's literally a religion. For all their I hate religion, this is your religion, especially in Mark Hamill. This is his religion at this point in time. The way he behaves.
This is the force. Right?
Yeah. This is basically, you know, his religion at this point.
This reminds me of, and I think I said this before. I talked about my grandfather and his brother. And they were 180 in politics, right? Mm-hmm. Plot twist. My grandfather was very conservative. He was very much a Republican. And his brother, who was a Korean War vet, was very much a Democrat. He loved Hillary Clinton. And they used to fight, but they would get along.
It cannot be perfect.
At the end of the day, they would fight about it, but then they would go out for coffee. They always went to Dunkin' Donuts. It had to be Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know why, but they go to Dunkin' Donuts, and they were still brothers at the end of it. And now,
they encourage you to leave your family.
Mark Hamill was, and I saw this the other day, and I'm like, you know, I for the longest time I was kind of giving him a pass. I'm like, whatever, he's allowed to have his opinions. But there were people in his mentions of one of, I think it was the LA Times tweet, where they were like, hey, I left my family because of Trump, whatever. And he was like, well, you got to do what you got to do. I'm like, no, you shouldn't be encouraging people to never speak to their family again over politics, unless it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that is cult-like behavior. Mm-hmm. And it's freaking ridiculous. And it's going to start up again. Anyway, let's talk about this. So we have two publications that would not endorse Harris and publicly, and because of it, they had their editors resign. We had the LA Times. They had their board members, Robert Greene and Karen Klein, quit Thursday. And their editor, Muriel Garza, she decided to quit too. I'm like, I don't know where you're going to go. Mm-mm. I'm going to be honest. With all the journalists getting laid off, like, I don't know where you think you're going to go. But yeah, this is her.
But that's also concerning. There's a lot of people who work at this newspaper besides them that might not agree with what they want to do. And then they're like, we're going to all quit. Okay, which you're allowed to do. I mean, honestly, if you don't want to be somewhere because of it, then of course quit. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to strong arm to get their own way. Yeah. And it's like, but for whatever reason, their boss who owns the paper said no.
Yeah. And I'm going to speculate as to why. And I think it has a lot to do with economics. Yeah. I think it has almost everything to do with economics. Look, the reality of the situation, we've been covering this for a while now. Things are not good in journalism at all. Like newspapers are folding. People are getting laid off. There have been a record number of journalists getting laid off in the last couple of years.
If only someone said this was going to happen.
Yeah, right? People are getting burnt out because they're getting more work foisted on them. But the LA Times has already laid people off. The Washington Post has already laid people off. And they're not doing well financially. So the last thing you want to do when you're on the knife's edge, right, is potentially alienate 50% of your customer base.
But but people like Mark Hamill's going to try to make sure that happens anyway. It's like by not picking a side, you're trying to be like, hey, we're just going to report the news. We're not going to tell you who to vote for. Well, it's not your job anyway to people who vote for. But, we're going to keep it like we're not going to endorse either candidate and they're just going to report the news like, people pay them to do. And you have Mark Hamill and them, I'm canceling. But if they would turn on endorse Harris, they're going to lose half their audience too.
Yes. And I suspect what is actually going on here is the owners of these papers, beyond the fact that they could alienate 50% or more of their audience by, endorsing a candidate now in this climate, in this economy. But I suspect that because they are billionaires themselves, they're looking at what a Harris presidency would look like. And they're like, yeah, this might not be good for us financially. This might not be good for us. And it's not even, a lot of people.
Especially Bezos.
Yeah, Bezos. So we'll talk briefly about Bezos. Bezos is notoriously good at escaping paying taxes, right? We're going to put it that way. I've actually watched videos on how he does it. And if Harris gets elected, she would put the kibosh on that.
Well, yeah, because what she wants to do is that gains.
The unrealized gains.
Which I still want to know. So if you have to pay taxes on money that you gain on stocks, they give you money back when you lose? Money on stocks? See, that's a problem. But yeah. So apparently rich people allegedly hide their money in stocks. And then if they don't have to pay on the gains, then they just get away with it. So what she wants to do is make sure they pay via that. Unfortunately, while that might make them pay, it's going to really hurt a lot of people who use that money for retirement or whatever. Yeah. Because if you're using that money and you're trying to earn the money there to have retirement, because most of us, aren't millionaires and don't have, rich parents, or you aren't, a politician who somehow gets rich whenever they're, in a job that they're supposed to serve the people. Most of us have to use the stock market and things like that to try to have a retirement. But if you gain money to have a retirement, they're going to tax all that too.
Yeah, and at that point, there's no point. There's no point in investing.
Because you never can make any money. Well, this is what pisses me off. I'm gonna take a little side tangent here for a second, and it's something we were talking about the other day. I am so livid about all this. Okay, so when we had situations in our lives where things happened, like mostly because like layoffs and stuff, and we were not doing well, and we struggled, and we had to work like twice as hard because there's nobody hiring, and we were like, making up our own jobs, trying to do little odd jobs to try to keep our house and our kids taken care of and everything else. We would apply for help, and they wouldn't give it to us. They wouldn't give it to us, but they'll give it to people who just sit their ass at home all day, and they'd give it to them. So we couldn't get help. We tried, but I think I got medical for the kids, and that's about it. But that was, at least we got that. So we were happy, but still, we couldn't get any help. So you get to a place where you're doing well, and you're making more money, and you worked your ass off to get there. And then when you get there, you know what happens? They tax you to death. That you're not allowed to escape. You're not allowed to be middle class, because when you're middle class, you get the fuck taxed out of you. I'm sorry. That's the best way to put it. They do. They fuck you. They bend you over and they fuck that tax right out of you.
They need to. Yeah, that's it. Because they're always like, well, business owners. Assuming that business owners are all billionaires.
The thing is, when you're a small business, you're trying to get a couple jobs for people to help other people so they don't end in the same position you're in. Yeah. And then they turn around and they tax you to the place where you can't even. You're actually worse off in some ways because you owe so much in taxes. There's no way to get ahead. There's no way to get out of it. You're always going to stay there. And all your money goes to people that are here, some in questionable legality ways, and other people that just sit in their ass at home and demand more. And there's a little reason why we're a little bit tired of hearing about socialism. Fuck you, because I busted my ass and now I don't get to keep my money. So you can sit at home and do nothing. It's not fair. And now the average American who uses the stock market to try to get in a retirement, you're not allowed to have that either because they're going to tax that too to try to get Bezos then to pay. And I understand what they're trying to do. I see it. I get what they're trying to do. There's a lot of people that have a lot of money aren't paying their fair share. And I get that. And I think that I do agree that that's a problem. But what you're going to do is you're going to hurt everybody else.
Yeah.
That's what I'm mad about. That's unrelated, but related. Go ahead.
Basically, at the end of the day, the middle class, I mean, they're like, oh, there's no more middle class. I'm like, you make destroyed the middle class on so many levels.
But you can't be. You can't.
And you can't be. If you're middle class or upper middle class,
they take all your money anyway.
They take it anyway. And then they give it to people who don't want to work or
they brought in here for votes. I mean, you brought in here for whatever reason.
Boy, you're worried about me saying stuff.
I'm just pissed.
All right, I'm pissed too. A lot of people are pissed. So what's happening is because everybody's so pissed off because it would not be to the advantage, in my opinion, of people like Jeff Bezos. They're like, yeah, we're not even going to pick a side this time. Plus, I'm going to be honest. Looking at the numbers, it looks like you're backing the wrong horse.
Well, beyond that though, let's look at this. We joked about this back when the election Biden won last time. We said, what is the news outlet's going to do? Because they don't have a punching bag. They still spent 4 years trying to find a way to bring Trump into it before the election. They kept trying to bring him into it, even when it was irrelevant. They keep trying to blame him for things he had nothing to do with. But beyond that, they want 4 more years of Trump because they'll make so much more money. They'll get so many more views.
Yeah.
He's good for business. I mean, as sad as that is, they're not going to tell you that. But that's what it was. That's why they kept trying to invoke him, even when he wasn't running again at the time, because we're still way ahead of when we were going to see who's going to run next time. They were still trying to invoke him constantly, even when he wasn't even in charge, because they needed those hits. So these news outlets aren't going to want, they're not going to say that, but they're going to want Trump to win just because they're going to get all this more views that way.
Yeah, we talked about this with talking about all the journalism layoffs and all that. Jezebel, which was a sister site to Kotaku, they got sold off. Geo Media sold them off, right? And they actually shut them down originally, and then they sold them off. And I think it was, what was it, Salon? It was one of the other outlets bought them, and they said the reason they bought them is they were trying to get as much election year revenue out of them as they could, because they thought they were going to write all these anti-Trump hit pieces, and none of this stuff is sticking like it did in 2016. Like, people are fed up, they're tired. The economy fucking sucks. Right now I'm just telling you, right now, as a journalist, is a very bad time to just walk away.
I know, that's what I was thinking.
Secure job.
It was dumb. Plus, they're going to come across as being difficult. If I was going to hire, I'm like, you already quit because you had a temper tantrum, and a hissy fit because your owner didn't want to tell people how to vote. And I honestly I disagree with that. And you're going to walk away and quit as a temper tantrum. Why would somebody else hire you?
Yeah, because it's going to be like, as soon as we don't do what you want, you're going to, you're gonna cause problems. And this is why I think you're seeing a lot of people that were lauded a couple of years ago not getting work now or getting gone. We're seeing this in comics. There are a lot of people that were hoisted up on the shoulders of comics journalists just a couple of years ago. Now nobody calls them for work, not because they necessarily disagree with their politics or whatever. They don't call them for work because they're like, you are vicious and you will turn on people when they do something you don't like.
They're all like demanding the union. They're saying out to the union and everything, demanding, why did you not endorse? Because we always endorse, basically what we want. And it's like, look, I have no answer why this person didn't. You're well within your rights to quit.
Yeah, you are.
But, he doesn't have to give you an answer, really. I mean, it sucks, but when you work for somebody else, if you don't like it, start your own thing and endorse whoever the hell you want.
Instead of, so what we did, the one paper I worked for that I was managing editor for, the publisher was actually very, very conservative. Weirdly enough.
Yeah.
Like
conservative.
He was like, I mean, you're talking like Sam Eagle personified.
It's funny though. You worked for somebody who was a Democrat, and you worked for somebody who was, you worked for people that, and there was very far, to the right, and you've worked for these people, and it worked out fine. You worked for all these people, and you didn't always agree with them, but it worked out fine.
Yeah,
Continue.
that was then though, because we had half of our writers were actually pretty far left, and I mean, they would grouse about things because I know I was there when I was running that particular paper when Reagan died, and he had this big publisher wrote like a 2-page eulogy about Reagan, and our one writer who I got along with great, I had no problem with him, but he was like, this is the first time I ever heard anybody just like completely unload on Reagan. And you're talking to a guy who spent a good chunk of his life in California, and this guy just like hated Reagan. Like Reagan was the devil. And he's like, I'm not going to have anything to do with it. I don't want to be involved in it. I don't even know if I want to be in that issue of the paper, blah, 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 blah. It was like almost like TDS before TDS. I'm like, I have never heard anybody hate Reagan that much, but he didn't quit. It was just like, I don't support it. Why couldn't you just put an op-ed in? Here's why I personally am endorsing Kamala Harris. I don't think it should be.
Not if you're told you can't put it in.
No, she wanted the editorial board to make a big public, like the paper itself is endorsing, or have multiple opinions. Here's one. Of course, at these papers, you don't.
Well, then you have to out yourself as a Republican. You don't want to do that.
Well, that's what I think is going on. I actually think, and we had this is Bezos, Washington Post again. This is another one. They had a bunch of people get laid off, and we had their another editor quit because their moral obligation to stand up to Donald Trump or whatever. And it's like I think they know which way things are going to go. They are business people, and
I honestly think they just want Trump to win because they have 4 more years or something to bitch about.
Do you? I don't even think it's that. I think it's just the business side of it.
Well, Bezos doesn't want to pay taxes on.
He doesn't want to pay taxes.
His earnings for stock.
And I think everything is changing. These papers are hanging on by their fingertips, and you cannot risk alienating anyone. All these companies are starting to learn. This is the reason we're starting to see the pivot, I think, in Hollywood too. It's going to take a while, but they're starting to pivot because they're like, even if we absolutely positively loathe Donald Trump and loathe the people who worked for him and loathe conservatives and hate these people, whatever, we can't let them know that we hate them because they won't spend money with us anymore. And God knows we need the money. So suck it up. Smile for the chuds, take their money, and then you can bitch about them privately.
It blows my mind because all these people have political leanings, and they always, but like you said, your grandpa and your great uncle, and stuff, and they would argue about it. But at the end of the day, it was about everybody was kind of united on whatever their job was and stuff. And it just to me, it blows my mind that just saying, hey, you know what? I don't want to alienate customers when we're at a time where media is in danger and we need everybody we can get. Or that's the reason why. We don't know why, but whatever the reason. And then they have such a meltdown like this. It's just like, it blows my mind. I just can't. But this is the same mentality. People you have to pass purity tests to be friends with people, or you can't be family with somebody who votes differently from you and all that. I just can't wrap my head around it. Like this whole mentality is very scary.
Yeah, it's insane. It's interesting though. Yeah, they already had that. They already had the endorsement drafted, and then Bezos stepped in and said, "Yeah, you're not running that."
He interfered with the publication. It's his paper.
He owns it. This is okay. So back to that paper I worked for, right? I answered directly to the publisher, and yeah, I was the managing editor. But if he vetoed something, guess what? Guess who signed my checks? And I understood how it worked. I didn't always like it. There were times I absolutely hated it because there were times that he was making, backroom deals with.
Yeah, it's shit, but it is what it is.
Yeah, he was making deals with certain advertisers or certain political candidates or whatever that were friends of his, but I worked for him. It was his paper.
Yeah, at the end of the day,
what are you supposed to do? And that's just it. You don't like it, go someplace else.
And that's what they're doing. They're leaving.
They're leaving,
which they're allowed to do.
But what are you gonna do? Where are you gonna go?
It's probably gonna bite you in the ass unless you find some extremist left outlet. I think it's gonna bite you in the ass.
Curling up and dying, and the reason they're curling up and dying is, again, this is back to that whole socialist. Where's the money gonna fucking come from?
I'm sorry. The Post Guild, a union representing 1,000 journalists and other staff at the Post, said in a statement, "We are concerned that management interfered with the work of our members of editorial. They own the paper."
Yes.
They own the damn paper. We are deeply concerned that the Washington Post, an American news institution in the nation's capital, would make the decision to no longer endorse political candidates, especially a mere 11 days ahead of the immensely consequential election. We're just pissed because you didn't endorse. Okay, fine. But if you endorsed Trump, you would be even more mad. You know?
Yeah.
So he decided to endorse nobody. But we're mad because we didn't get what we wanted, is what the whole thing is. This decision undercuts the work of our members at a time when we should be building the readers' trust, not losing it. Well, you understand that not all your readers vote for Harris, right? You know,
I don't think they do.
I just think people need to understand it is not your fucking job to tell people how to vote. You know, traditionally newspapers and news outlets, they've always kind of, endorsed a certain candidate. So that's not new. And I mean, that they're not wrong about that. But at the end of the day, is why I tell people, it's not my job to tell you how to vote. It's your own job to decide that. I'm not going to tell you how to vote. I'm not going to be mean to you if you vote differently than me, because it's not my job. I'm here telling you the news. I'm here, talking about topics and things like that. At the end of the, and politics, unfortunately, we can't escape it. We try to stay apolitical, but lately you can't escape it, right? I'm still not going to tell you how to vote because that's not my place. If you want to go vote for Harris, vote for Harris. If you want to vote for Trump, vote for Trump. If you want to vote for Donald fucking Duck, vote for Donald Duck. I don't care. It's not my job to tell you. Yeah. But, if I was run by somebody else and they told me, hey, it's my company, I own it, it's my money, I'm paying your salary, and you and say, hey, I don't want you to tell people to vote this way or that way or whatever. Tell people to vote this way. My choices are, well, do it or leave, and that they left. But you can't take the union and try to leverage the union to demand that the paper has to endorse their candidate. Well, okay. Then just endorse the other candidate just to show them what's what. I don't know what to tell you.
So this is why people get mad at us, because we're like, you're anti-union. No, this is where I think the union overstep.
Because I don't believe it for 1,000 journalists. They're all Democrats. No, I don't buy that for 1 minute.
I think probably the majority are. I mean, this is a paper that proudly had, democracy dies in darkness for whatever. But I think it was all about the hits. The thing is that these unions think they have a right to dictate the content. If you're being worked, 18 hours a day and you're getting paid half of what you should be getting paid or whatever, and they're 7 days a week and they're making you sleep on the couch and they're, that's a reason to unionize. If it's just like, well, we're not allowed to publicly endorse Kamala Harris, that's a fucking
because you
stupid.
Wanted to. And they said, this decision undercuts the work of our members at a time we should get to do trust, not losing it. And then it was condemned by top Post editor Marty Barron, who called the move cowardice. This is just proving Zachary Levi and then people right. Because
he's 100% right.
This is just proving right. The people, if you are a Democrat, you're allowed to say you're a Democrat. If you're a Republican, you're not allowed to say that. Personally, I pick independent because I think both sides can be full of shit. But in this case, I'm going to flat out say it. If you're a Democrat, you are allowed to be a Democrat. And that's fine. But for some damn reason, I can't understand. If you're a Republican, somehow that's that equates to, I don't even know what to compare it to, the way they behave. It's like, it's insane. It's always been, sometimes we had three parties, but for the most part, we've had two-party systems. And Republicans and Democrats, each have their own thing, and they each have their own system, and both are valid. Because that's how we keep things in check, and we try to keep things balanced, right? They're both valid. I'm tired of this whole, if you vote one way, you can't even talk about it, because if you do, there's going to be repercussions. And that's basically what they're doing here. They're basically, it's a threat tactic. Yeah. And it's like, you're going on telling people how you're not bullies, and then you act like bullies. And that's the problem.
So that's the thing. It was never about
cowardice.
It was to get you to let your guard down, to let them do whatever the fuck they want.
I would argue that cowardice is when you don't let other people have an opinion different than you because you can't stand to hear it. So you bully and you blacklist and you undermine people.
Because it can't win in a fair fight.
And all you're doing is taking people like me in the middle and making us be like, whoa, what the hell?
Yeah.
That's all you're doing. You're pushing people to the right because you're acting like a bunch of wackadoo nut asses. I'm making up my own words.
Wackadoo nut ass. Wackadoo. What is a wackadoo?
I don't know. I'm on cold medicine.
That sounds like an OnlyFans account.
I'm on cold medicine. I'm sorry for anything I say.
Geeky's not feeling too
good. I am highly medicated right now.
Wackadoo nut ass.
I can't promise I even know what I'm talking about in these videos. But yeah.
Yeah, he's oiled and ready to go. Wackadoo nut ass.
I'm just like, it's cowardice. It's cowardice that you let us have our own way. I think that takes more balls to tell them all no.
Yeah, right. So let me tell you a story, though, because this is interesting. We're talking unions, we're talking papers, we're talking the paper I used to work for. That was actually the company I think I've talked about before, where I saw firsthand a union destroy a company. He had this particular owner owned, he actually printed many, many other newspapers, right? Because he had a massive printing
It was mostly
operation.
a printing operation.
It was mostly a printing, and then they spun it off into, we're going to publish our own newspapers, right? Because they were doing everybody else's newspapers, a lot of weeklies, magazines, and stuff like that. They're like, we might as well do our own. So they did. He sold the printing company because his printers, who were some of the best, I'm not even kidding, some of the best paid printers on the East Coast at the time, because of the clients that they got. They had people from like all over the country, and they wanted more because they saw the money coming through, and they're like, well, we want more. We know you're making millions, millions, and millions of dollars. And he sold the company. He split the paper off from the printing company, and he kept the newspaper as like a hobby because he didn't need it. The guy was a millionaire like 100 times over. And then he sold off the printing company because he's like, you know what? I'm not going to deal with the union. And then the new owners came in and they like fired everybody, I think is what happened. I don't know, because I went with the paper, so it didn't really matter. But yeah, they like fired everybody and said, yep, you know what? You're out of luck. And I remember that because they called in like labor relations and everything. They were making all kinds of claims against him. And he was like, I don't understand. They're like, well, we don't get enough breaks or we don't get enough. And he's like, you guys are paid. And this is back in the early 2000s. These guys were being paid like $30 an hour. Like it was insane. And they're like, we want twice as much money. I was like, what the fuck are you smoking? And so, yeah, they all lost their jobs. And I think this could happen. Jeff Bezos, he could shut down the Washington Post. It's not making money. It's losing money. We've covered it. He could shut it down tomorrow and be like, you know what? It's not worth the aggravation. Or I'm just going to sell it to somebody else.
It's
and they can
probably a tax shelter.
It probably is a tax. So here's what I've heard. I cannot verify this, but there was a whole video I was trying to watch on. And apparently, yeah, the reason that Bezos is so against the unrealized gains is that he keeps all of his multiple billions of dollars in stock, and then he basically lives off of loans. And because it's cheaper to pay the interest on the loans than it is to pay the tax on the stocks. And that's how he doesn't pay taxes. And there's all these
I don't
loopholes.
agree with. I want to make that clear. I don't think that people that are wealthy should be allowed to not pay their share if it's true.
But if you close that loophole,
it's going to hurt. It's not them that's going to hurt.
Right.
It's going to hurt
retirees.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
it's going to hurt everybody else is what's going to happen. That's why I'm so angry, because I'm like, you struggle when you don't have anything and they don't help you. And then you pull yourself out of it because they say, pull yourself out of your bootstraps. So you do. And you pull yourself out of it and you work your ass off and you start doing okay and you can start to pull yourself out of it. And then they're like, oh, well, you're doing okay now, so we're going to tax you even more to make sure you pay for people who aren't, that we wouldn't help you when you weren't. But, now we got a bunch of people come in the country that, shouldn't be here. We got to pay for them too. And all this other stuff. And then they tax you into, you can never go past a certain point because they'll make sure that you are sometimes worse off in the taxes you have to pay. Even if you're trying to help others. It's insane. And then, people like them who are making these decisions are rich already or have parents that are rich or, Nepo babies or whatever. And it doesn't affect them.
Yeah.
They can hide their stuff. They make sure they do.
Yeah, they've got overseas accounts.
But this is going to hurt the people you're claiming you're going to help. It's all it's going to do.
Yep. So there we go, guys. Good luck with that. I don't know where you think you're going to go to work at. Nobody's hiring at this point.
Yeah, they aren't hiring. I mean, go start your own thing, though, know?
Okay, so they're all going to Substack now, right? They're all like, let's go to Substack. Remember when 2 years ago or 3 years ago, Substack was for Nazis?
Yes.
And now they're all going to Substack.
I mean, here's the thing, though. I mean, at the end of the day, though, I will say this. At the end of the day, if you aren't comfortable with what the place you're working for is doing, you don't agree with it, you don't like it, it's their choice because they own it, right? Then they did the right thing. They quit. They left. That is the right thing to do. And go start your own thing where you're in charge of it. Then if you do that, then I'm not going to say anything to them because, to be honest, that's what I would tell them to do. Yeah. You don't like it, quit and do your own thing. And if that's what they're doing, then I agree with what they did, in that regard. I just don't think the newspaper should be telling everybody how to vote.
Then you get to become the business owner and you get to see everything that goes on and how hard it is. And then, people change. We're going to wrap this up.
Except Mark Hamill. He's just been a complete asshole for a while.
He's just a grumpy.
Anyway, yes, let's wrap this up.
Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later.
Bye.
Join the reef. Go to clownfish-.com. That's clownfish-.com. You will get exclusive access to podcasts and videos and comic strips and more, as well as merch discounts. Check it out. If you were a member, you could get this t-shirt, this dismal t-shirt, on our website. You'd get a 10% discount on that. You can also join in the community on clownfish-.com. Thank you so much for the support.